Ok, estamos ao vivo, então.
Okay, we are live now. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Carol Alarcon. I'm the technical coordinator of the Amazon 2.0 project in Brazil. I'm glad to welcome everyone on behalf of the Amazon project and IUCN. And I'd like to let you know that there are some blackouts in my power grid here. So if I got interrupted, some of my coworkers will keep going. We are going to start the second and final webinar of the series on community monitoring experiences in the Brazilian Amazon. Today, we will address the topic monitoring of biodiversity and natural resources. Last week, the topic was monitoring of pressures and threats and territorial surveillance. For those who missed it or would like to watch it again, the recording link has just been sent to you on the chat. But before we start, I'd like to guide you on the use of the Zoom platform. First of all, we have today's simultaneous translation from Portuguese into English and Spanish at your disposal. So if you speak Portuguese, as almost the entire event will be in Portuguese, I suggest you select the channel off on the interpretation icon in the function bar below. And when someone speaks in Spanish, you can turn on the Portuguese channel. For you who speak Spanish, I suggest you choose the Spanish channel in the interpretation icon in the function bar at the bottom right. In addition, we have two spaces for interaction. The first is the chat, where greetings and general comments can be made. And I would like to invite you all to use the chat to introduce yourselves, share your name, country of origin, and institution. And the second interaction space is the Q&A window. And you can send your questions there. So, since I presented everything, let's focus on the topic of our meeting, which are the community monitoring experiences in Amazon. The purpose of this meeting is to provide a forum for the exchange of ideas and networking among community monitoring experiences in the Brazilian Amazon, as well as to put under the spot some successful initiatives of local partners in Acre and of some members of IUCN in the country. That's why we have here today the Biodiversity Monitoring Initiative carried out by the State Department of Environment of Acre in the Chandless State Park. It's one of the experiences that we support, as well as the experiences of EP, WCS, and FVA, and 3 members of the IUCN in the country. The event is organized by IUCN through the project Amazon 2.0, and the co-organization is the IUCN Members Committee in the country. So I'd like to take the opportunity and open the mic to Angela Pelin. She's a project coordinator at the Ecological Research Institute, EP, and she's a member of the National Committee of IUCN. She will be the moderator, but not now. First, I'd like her to speak on behalf of the committee. Thank you, Caroli. I'd like to thank everyone on behalf of the committee. I'm very happy on being here and attending this event, and I thank you on behalf of IUCN in Brazil. And I'd like to talk to you a little about the committee. We are formed of about 30 organizations that work on nature conservation in Brazil. The committee in Brazil is formed by an executive board, president, vice president, and executive board. The international conservation is the president, EP is the VP, and Imaflora is the executive secretary for the next 3 years. This is the structure. But there are around 30 members very, very active all from very important organizations that are very engaged in nature conservation in Brazil. We have some ordinary meetings in which some decision-making is made, action plans and strategies are discussed. And we also have monthly meetings that have been very interesting and pleasant and provide moments to exchange ideas and to strengthen this network in Brazil. IUCN is an international organization that is very important all over the world, and the representation of this committee in Brazil is a very interesting space, a very interesting room to debate conservation and to position ourselves. We have been active on communication, political incidents, and fundraising, and the strategy of IUCN in Brazil itself. And we know the importance of the organizations, and we would like to invite some other organizations that are interested in joining us in this network. So please, I extend my invitation to all of you. Please get in touch with us, attend some of the meetings that we have organized, and then you get to know better the committee and maybe become an officially instituted member in Brazil. This network of institutions is really, really important to build some consensus in Brazil and to build strategies for conservation in the country. So I'd like to thank you again for having me here as a co-organizer through the committee, talking about community monitoring, and I am at your disposal to discuss a little more. And if you'd like to know a little more about the committee, please let me know. Thank you, Carole. Thank you, Angela. This group is really good, well articulated, and we're very happy to co-host this event with you today. So let me follow my list. It's very important to mention that the experiences are not, we are not talking about all the experiences that exist in Brazil and in Amazon, but it's important to present some of the initiatives that approach different targets, methods, and thus promote this space of interaction and to reach potential interested people in civil society, universities, and government. The agenda for today is divided like that. We have this welcoming space and the purpose of the project. Following that, we will share all the initiatives of community monitoring in Brazil. We're going to start with Cristina Toffoli. She's a coordinator at IP, and she's going to talk about participative monitoring of biodiversity, and it's a very important program that has been implemented by the federal government through ICMBio. After that, Luis Henrique Medeiros Borges will follow. So if you please open your camera. He's a consultant of the State Department of Environment of Acre, and he's coordinating the implementation of this program in Acre. After him, Fabiano Silva, who is an executive coordinator of Fundação Vitória Amazônica, who is going to present the system of monitoring the use of natural resources of Unini River. And last, Gina Leite. She's part of the program of Open Science in Amazon Waters of WCS. After, we are going to have a space of discussion, a Q&A session, and then finally, we're going to finish the presentation and summarize the main challenges and all the lessons that we could learn. Well, since we are on the same page, I'd like to invite the regional coordinator of the project, Amazon 2.0, Braulio Buendia, to share a little about our initiative. Thank you, Carole. Thank you very much. There are many very, very important initiatives here.
Saludo. Lo que voy a presentarles ahora rápidamente es un poco ponerles en contexto de qué se trata el proyecto Amazonía 2.0. ¿Ok? Entonces, adelante, por favor. Lo que uno se pregunta es, ¿por qué nace Amazonía 2.0? ¿No? Sobre todo preocupado por las presiones y las amenazas que se ejercen sobre los bosques en territorios indígenas, ¿no? Hay una necesidad de hacer algo, de poder apostar a disminuir estas presiones y amenazas. ¿Cómo lo vamos a hacer? El clic, por favor. Para crear modelos de gestión propios de las comunidades indígenas.
So to create management models in the indigenous and communities to prevent and mitigate conflicts regarding natural resources. How? By empowering the indigenous communities for them to act and to respond properly to monitoring and to improve their life quality. To which purpose? To contain deforestation and degradation of the forest and to contribute to mitigate the climate change.
Es un proyecto de 5 años que empezó el año 2017.
Project started in 2017, and the idea is to strengthen the governance models in these indigenous territories with the purpose to strengthen the local capacities for them to well govern their territories and woods, and then to strengthen the community's oversight in South America. We're present in 6 countries, in Colombia, in Ecuador, and Peru,
tres áreas de intervención: el Parque Nacional de Chandless, el territorio indígena Río Alto Purús, ¿no? Y Moabate. En Guyana trabajamos también con 7 comunidades y también en Surinam, ¿no? Entonces,
Guyana, we work with 7 communities. There are over 2.2 million communities. Next, please. Sorry about the translation. We had a problem on the relay. Now we're back. So there are 3 main results. First result is to strengthen the instruments of management through the implementation of a great platform of regional monitoring. The second result is oriented to strengthen and empower the local groups for them to become official, accredited, and in some cases, they are called rangers or local monitors. And then they have a political resonance for a local and national approach. With the issue of monitoring, the model is from bottom up. We have actions and reactions with the participation of local indigenous community. They register the information through satellite alerts, and they use different technologies to register some actions and to process information, to generate some reaction on the authorities. And after that, monitoring the woods with the GeoVisor that feeds this inventory of information from bottom up. In Brazil, there is a very particular work that is connected to the public authorities' participation. What are the impacts of the project? We can strengthen 3 lines. From everything that we have done so far is to strengthen the forest and territorial governance. So we could institutionalize those oversight groups in Peru, in Ecuador. So now some indigenous nationalities are acknowledged by the state for them to be focal points of monitoring, not only of natural resources, but in the case of Colombia, there is an intercultural dialogue and a work of governance with many different institutions. Also, the conservation of forests. We are looking to qualify in some different countries. In the case of Brazil, there's a very strong work with Colombia as well. We have OPIAC, which is a technical and political school, and in Suriname with the Rangers. And also, there's also a reaction because of the pandemic of COVID-19, because all the alert and rapid response monitoring spots that were used to monitor natural resources, now we can monitor the public health of indigenous communities. It was not predicted, but it helped a lot during this moment of the pandemic. And we had several regional challenges as to keep strengthening the governance, because the state was not present in some points. So it's important to grant the institutionalization of the community monitoring in some countries and to stimulate the creation of indigenous schools in a permanent way. We also have to consolidate the articulation with some official and public authorities, cooperation initiatives with the private sector, and some other issue is to make it sustainable. All those initiatives of monitoring must be support economically and to give opportunities of funding and to give technical and political support. So it's important to make them sustainable. And this is what I could tell you. And now I'd like to ask Carole to tell you more about the agenda that we can perform in Brazil. You have the word, Carole. Thank you. Let me just speak quickly to situate the project here in Brazil. In Brazil, we operate in the state of Acre, in the High Purus River and Mamoadachi indigenous land, and in the state park Chandless. It's a territory that forms a mosaic of protected areas where 4 ethnic groups live: Kaxinawa, Madija, Manchineri, and Jaminawa. Besides that, the riverside dwellers who live in the Chandless State Park. The 3 territories add up to a continuous area of more than 1 million hectares, and they have a deforestation of only 0.3%. However, although there is a good degree of conservation, and since they are on the border with Peru, the region is subject to various threats, such as trafficking of forest resources and wildlife, land invasions, fires, drug trafficking, among others. That's why the project works in the region, strengthening community-based actions, both in forest monitoring and territorial surveillance. In this context, I'd like to mention that the project supports and capitalizes on 2 experiences. One, the indigenous agroforestry agents presented last week by Julieta. I salute you, Julieta. And today we're going to listen a little about the second initiative, that is Programa Monitora, which Luis will tell us a little more about, that is implemented in State Park Chandless. So I'd like to invite you to access our website, and I am available. I'm at your disposal through email. And I'd like to finally pass the mic to those initiatives that are present here. So I'd like to pass the word to Angela Pelin, our moderator, that's going to present it to you from now on. Thank you, Caroli. I'd like to thank you for being here. I'd like to talk a little to you, to have a debate that's very important. So we are among friends here. So I'd like to thank you on behalf of IP, and I'd like to thank you on behalf of IUCN and the... Just let me comment quickly about IP. We work with conservation of nature, and we also work with socio and environmental projects in Brazil. And regarding the protected areas, we believe that those areas they should be territorial development centers, thinking about sustainable development, because they have great potential. And inside our mission, so we need to promote development in a more integrated way, considering some management instruments with social participation and arranging with the local governances and communities. So I think that this initiative of the seminar on which we're talking today about community monitoring of biodiversity and community monitoring in Amazon, it's really pleasant to be here at this moment. So I'd like to ask our guests, and I'd like to remind you that we will have 4 presentations. So Cristina Toffoli will share her experience, my friend from IP Institute, Luiz Henrique from the State Department of Acre, and Fabiano Silva of Vitória Amazônica Foundation, and Gina Leite from WCS. Each one of those panelists will have from 10 to 12 minutes to show their presentations. So I'd like you to mind you about the time, because we have a lot to talk today. So I will warn you when you have 3 minutes left, and then I'll let you know. So I think that's now. So I'd like to start now by inviting Cristina Toffoli.
Em unidades de conservação na Amazônia. Tina, tá com você.
So, Cristina, you got the word. So, hi, everyone. Good afternoon. So it's been really difficult just to unmute it, just to share the screen. I'm going to be talking about the participated biodiversity monitoring in the conservation units in the Amazon, which is a project that happens in partnership with the National Participated Monitoring of Biodiversity, and also counts for support with the support of Garden Bench Foundation, and also so in this national program, Monitora, there are 3 sub-programs: the marine, aquatic, and the inland sub-program. And out of these 3 programs, we support the second one. So the program has many components, out of which that we support. In the inland program, we have some targets of monitoring. And these are targets of monitoring that are, they follow standardized form of monitoring. And then independently of the sub-program, they happen in some biomes in Brazil, and PET actually supports it in the Amazon. You know, this is that IP supports that not only happen in the Amazon. So mammals and butterflies, and the continental aquatic sub-program, you know, just small fish. So we're supporting the development of the methodology in the initial articulation and in the implementation. There's a dog barking. I can hear what she's saying. So besides the global targets, we also have the complementary one, and they were thought of to think about a specific question. She's breaking up on me, I'm sorry.
Do componente florestal do subprograma terrestre e do aquático continental, pirarucu, quilônios aquáticos e tucunaré. O MPB, que é como a gente chama carinhosamente, né, o monitoramento
As we call it.
So it happens in 18 units of conservation in Amazon. In some states of the north, we're not on Roraima. So we have over 12 million hectares of conservation units. The purpose of MPB is to monitor as a strategy to promote social participation on conservation, knowledge generation, and management effectiveness. But before that, to support the implementation of Monitora as well. So the implementation model suggested, it's not a cake recipe, so it's only a suggestion of implementation because it changes according to the characteristics of the region. So it's locally articulated on how it will be implemented, but generally it follows this model that starts by an articulation, mobilizing the local actors, some researchers, some NGOs, universities, and local communities. After that, we have those group construction of monitoring protocols in which we think about what will be monitored, what's the question we're going to ask locally, and we have the participation of the communities here. After the questions are asked, a researcher is hired to create a methodology, and then we get back to the conservation unit to adjust the methodology. So in this process, we had so far 794 participants. After that, we have courses of biodiversity monitors to qualify the local inhabitants and participants. So we trained over 1,667 participants. And then we have the data collection. And after 2 years of data collection, at least, we analyze the data, and we then have this knowledge meetings. And I forgot to tell you, the project started in 2013. And since 2013, we have been promoting lectures, but from 2017 on, EP and ICMBio started to be worried about the return of information. Then we organized this Saberes meeting that engages many researchers and local community to discuss scientific information. That's a way not only to discuss, but to make science a little more democratic, to take science to the local communities and the traditional communities. And this whole implementation talks about science democratization, because we're talking about scientific data collection. But after that, we have some evaluations of the results and of the data collection. So there are 286 advisors and 14 environmental analysts, and I'm going to present to you the outcomes. And everything was made collectively. So in total, over 3,000 people participated in this. Regarding the effectiveness of the management, according to this conservation unity, social and biological indicators, so some of them have reached 100% of this monitoring index, but regarding management, 87% of the environmental analysts realized that MPB actually contributes to the monitoring of this conservation management and to the effectiveness of management. And from the perspective of those environmental analysts, 100% of them, they understand that one of the main advantages is to influence at the conservation of the conservation unit, and 80% understand that it has a good impact in the handling actions. So regarding the changes on governance and management, 26% say that it supports the extractivist sustainability. 16% understand that it makes the community and the managers closer. And regarding the support to management, the integration and availability of biodiversity data, we have developed two systems. Monitora, which is a system for storing, managing, analyzing, and disclosing data. And CISBIA, which is a system that integrates the biodiversity data from some enterprises that impact the conservation unit that were separated. Now everything is integrated in the same system, ICMBio and IBAMA. And regarding social participation, 100% of the managers understand that it makes them closer to the communities. And regarding the knowledge generation, you have 3 minutes. I'm following Angela. So 73% of them realize that by adopting this participative monitoring, they make the information more available to society, and also 73% realize that it makes it easier to collect data in difficult areas. And regarding the executive board, 69% of them realize that it helps to reach information on biodiversity conservation and natural resources management. Besides that, regarding knowledge, we publish the methodological scripts of the complementary targets, and we are planning to publish that in September 2021, and it's going to make it easier to ensure the monitoring. And then in 2019, this book was published that describes the monitoring of biodiversity. And from a month now, we are going to publish a book regarding the Saberes meeting for making it easier to other units to understand our experience and experience of the different actors that are involved in this process. And I managed to present that in such short time. Thank you. Thank you, Tina. You could do that in time.
sobre tantas áreas, né? Na Amazônia tudo é muito grande, né? Então a gente olha os territórios, né? O tamanho de cada unidade de conservação é sempre impressionante. Bom, agora eu quero convidar o nosso segundo painelista.
Now I'd like to invite our second panelist, that is Luiz Henrique Medeiros Borges, which works in the State Department of Environment in Acre, and he's going to talk a little about this monitoring initiative in State Park Chandless. You have the word, 10 to 12 minutes. Good afternoon, everyone.
Falar logo após a Cristina, né? Mas vamos tentar suprir isso aí. Vocês podem me confirmar se a minha tela aparece para todos? Acho que não.
A gente está vendo você, não a apresentação ainda. Sim, agora está. Isso, só colocar no modo apresentação.
Sim. Certo. Então, pessoal, como foi apresentado, eu venho trazendo aqui algumas experiências do Parque Estadual Chandless, né, no âmbito da iniciativa do programa Monitora. O parque, como a Cristina já fez uma boa introdução a respeito do que é o programa e o que se faz com o programa, só uma pequena pincelada do que nós fazemos no Chandless, com uma continuidade das atividades que são consideradas para todas as unidades de conservação que recebem o recurso do Programa Áreas Protegidas da Amazônia, que é a realização do Programa de Monitoramento da Biodiversidade. No Chandless, em específico, nós estamos realizando a amostragem dos grupos que a Cristina já falou anteriormente, né, que são os alvos globais, os alvos mais básicos, né? Mamíferos de médio e grande porte, diurnos, aves cinegéticas, borboletas frugívoras e aves e plantas lenhosas. O Parque Estadual Chandless, só para a gente fazer uma pequena introdução, é uma unidade de conservação de proteção integral, aproximadamente quase 700 mil hectares, fica no estado do Acre, bem no centro do estado, faz divisa com outras unidades de conservação de uso sustentável e também terras indígenas, formando um grande bloco centro-oeste na região da Amazônia, gerida principalmente pela Secretaria de Estado do Meio Ambiente do Estado do Acre, e cujo nome remonta ao explorador e geógrafo da época, William Chandless, que foi quem deu o nome ao rio Chandless. Então, o Chandless é uma unidade de conservação que tem o nome do rio, que tem o nome do explorador da época, William Chandless. Aqui é a localização do parque, né, situado no estado do Acre, como a Carol apresentou ali no início dos projetos que estão no âmbito do Amazônia 2.0, a gente faz divisa ao norte da unidade, vamos dizer assim, a terra indígena Alto Purus, e ao sul, a terra indígena Momoadate. Essa é a área de atuação dos monitores do Chandless, né, são as trilhas de monitoramento. Bem no início da unidade, então essa é a área de ação deles durante as atividades de monitoramento.
This is the area of actuation, in the project. It also happens from January to April, and sometimes they visit these tracks so they can perform the sampling and they can watch over memos and also this kind of plans. So this is our group, and this kind of monitoring, it has a great experience and example in the implementation of this participative monitoring program. So we had this example, and now we just implemented in Chandless. All the activities of data collection, the definition of birds to be sampled, the planning, the institution of material, it is carried out in partnership with the monitors. So we got this principle of strengthening the processes that are local and also governance that are actually done by it. So most part of our monitors, they are young people, they are in this process of formation, of education. So they also got, they also got to watch over their families, and also, all the people, they got to watch over their families and places. And now the young people, they took over the place. They took over this responsibility. And now they are an integral part of this team. And, without any modest, they make justice to the job. And I have a wonderful team of monitors in Chandless. So they really rock it. So they've been with us since 2017, when we launched the first joint program, the first joint course. It is a course just to enable local agents from ICMBio, SAMA, and we also have the participation from some volunteers. So just as it was just a small group, we had 6 monitors, we had, this senior guy, now he's retired, and most recently, we had this magnifying of the activities monitoring with the initiatives by USN and also from Amazon 2.0. And also we had the integration of the protected areas in the Amazon. And this is the most recent photo. It was late last month. I was in this course with the program, with the agents. And we also got this monitoring, territorial monitoring, as Carol already talked about. And also, we also have the involvement of the community, which is really strong in the process of these initiatives. We have the participation of these community members that are, on-site actions. They are monitoring threats. The fishing monitoring is of their interest because it composes more than 70% of the dieting. And these are resources that are affected by the excessive hunting in the Purus Basin, in that region before the Chandless River, in the perimeter of the municipality of Manoel. So we have some photos of the last course, both for the initiatives of IAPA, and we also had a training about the territory monitoring. So the testimonies that we have for the communities is that besides the fact that they can participate in the process of management, because whether it's a fact or not, they also influence in the decision-making process. They also cite it is really important that they continue with the activities because it is a source, it is their breadwinner, but they are also working on data collection and stuff like that. They're also working on this resource that they're going to use it in the long term. And they're going to be able to, live on that for a long time. And they do not have really this kind of setback on their activities. So got 3 minutes, so thank you, Angela. As a result, we have some registered photos of some species that we've been carrying out with the help of some of the groups, like mammals and birds. So we got many registers, just like 51 species of mammals and many others of birds and primates. So we also got the monitoring of birds and also the monitoring of butterflies that is mainly coordinated by the girls, and they took it over. They just took it over the management of this part of the program, they feel really excited about the registering, the photo, the data sampling, the signatures. It is a profile that the researchers, they actually validate, and you see that is a really well laid out, you know, type of register that these researchers they come to analyze. It is really diverse. Some of the photos, you know, some of the collected butterflies. So we got our funding entities and partners in a project that is mainly funded by APA. And it is coordinated by the State Agency of Environment in Acre. And we got this great support from IUCN as a way just to add value through the Amazon 2.0 program. And, you know, it has been a great help for this team from IUCN headed by Caroli. So this is a photo of Chandless. And there's a final message for reflection. So of all the photos that we profoundly marked on my mind, no one exceeds the greatness of primitive forests that have been saved by mutilation by the hand of man. None can trespass these solitudes, untouched solitudes. So we got, you know, my contact. So if you're interested, I'm open to questions and other comments. So thank you, Luiz Henrique. So it's a very beautiful, very beautiful presentations, and the photos are enchanting. So I'm always integrated with the monitors and partner friends that are always with me on the field. So thank you. So now let's go on. I'm gonna invite Fabiano Silva from FVA, and he's also gonna share some experiences. So after all these years that we know that these teams, they have been aggregating a lot of, you know, a lot of knowledge in this field. So Fabiano, you have the word. So thank you very much, Angela. Thank you, IUCN, for the invitation. It is a pleasure for being here just to share the FVA experience. I'm going to share my screen so you can take a look at that. So I hope you can see my presentation. So the FVA agency has been, you know, working in the Amazon basin for a long time.
Durante a década de 90, nos primeiros trabalhos de mapeamento.
So the first works of mapping, community participative mapping for the development of the handling plan for Jaú Parque. This experience of participative management and mapping led to the development of the system of monitoring of resources use, which was implemented in Unity River, which is a river in the municipality of Marcelos that comprehends 9 communities. And it has a very interesting characteristic because it is formed by 3 different conservation units. And through the north, the extractivist Unity Reservation. And around 2017, when the system was developed, all this work was made in loco with a great participation of the local communities, covering over 150 kilometers from Manaus, traveling at 14 kilometers an hour, Amazonian speed. And the main objective of this monitoring system is to say, what resources are used? How many families? What do they extract? how much do they extract, and where do they extract it from, and how those resources, how the use of those resources evolve along the time. So we have been implementing SIMU since 2018. So we could finish like 13 years collecting data along with the families of the Unity River. So they voluntarily declare all the data, and all the system was built collectively with young people from Unity River, since the method up to the targets of monitoring. The scale is the Unity Basin. So for us to space the data, we used regular polygons in 2 scales. In the community use areas, we used a grid of 2 kilometers by 2 kilometers, and for the entire basin, when the family goes far from its land, we use a grid of 5 to 5 kilometers. The community monitoring is made by young people from the communities that for the majority of this time have been trained to carry out the monitoring, and they receive some allowance to help them to carry out the work. And they interview once a month every family that wants to declare their productive activities to the system. And SIMUR has different protocols. So we investigate about new farms, ornamental fishing. So we had a specific protocol, maritime, quelons, agriculture, hunting, vegetal resources, and animals of interest for conservation. And in front of this systematic monitoring of 13 years, we have been generating a series of results that have been applied distinctively. I will talk specifically about the outcomes of the system a little forward on this conversation, but originally the system was planned prioritarily for the families, the communities, to empower themselves regarding their process of natural use of resources. And then they start to discuss autonomously handling strategies and good practice for using the resources. Obviously, it depends fundamentally on our responsive capacity, because it's an obstacle in our system throughout the years, because it's a lot of data to process, and we had a limited capacity to give information back to the interested audience. But we used this data in different moments, from studies for the new boundaries for the conservation units, for plan elaboration, the development of plans, of management plans of the reserve. And today, one of the most curious and non-predicted uses of the data is we developed regularly, every 6 months, a report in this family scale, in which we got back to the families everything that they had reported to us, and annually an integrated report for all the leadership on all the data that the community produced about resources in that year. And the years passed by, and the families started to ask the history of those reports to be able to attest that they produced, especially regarding countryside retirement. So the systematic register of those information have been used frequently as a proof of evidence that they are working and producing, and then for them to be able to reach some public policies, especially retirement plans. So I'd like to close my presentation here to keep me inside the time, and we will have opportunities to discuss it further and to show the outcomes that the system can generate. Thanks for having me here, Angela. Thank you, Fabiano. You are very punctual and you could be in time. It's easy to moderate you. Thank you. I'd like to invite now Gina Leite from WCS. She's going to talk to us about this citizen science focused on those aquatic environments. And then we're going to start the debate. And then we can exchange information and talk a little about everything that was presented. Gina, thank you. You have the mic. Thank you. I'm very happy to be here. Thanks for having me here with my colleagues. Some of them already know the project, but for those who are not familiar with the project, it's a very good opportunity to expose that to. So I'd like to present to you today this ICTIO case that has a wider objective to talk about fishing migration in Amazon. So it's an open database with information regarding the entire Amazon basin, talking about Brazil and the other countries that form the Amazon. And it was made through collaboration in different scales. ICTIO was born from this project, Citizen Science, that was created in 2019, and it was born in 2017, and it became a network in 2019. So I'd like to quickly divide the presentation in 3 parts. What is the challenge? We have the solution, ICTIO, and the network, the international network that is behind ICTIO and behind some other solutions. First, the challenge. Fishing is one of the main natural resources of the Amazon region, so it's important to understand that. And if you don't work in Amazon, it's important to understand that. So the fluvial system in Amazon comprehends the most significant biodiversity regarding fish in the world. So many species of river fish, they feed over 20 million people in the Amazon region. So an example of species is the dorada that travels over 200 kilometers, and the iconic pirarucu that can weigh up to 300 kilos. So there are many community-based monitoring initiatives and help monitor this. And they develop actions to contribute to the conservation of those aquatic systems in the Amazon basin. So important contributions have been done with local initiatives about fish handling and some other aquatic species, and not only in Brazil, but in different countries. They comprehend different initiatives of use of natural resources, dialoguing with traditional knowledge, and these studies indicate that those fish that migrate are among the most threatened animals in the planet. Its population decreased around 76% from the 70s to 2016. It's a decreasing rate higher than any other terrestrial species. So in this presentation, we highlight some challenges. Those activities of monitoring and participative management of natural resources, they have a local reach and they are not integrated. And it's a great opportunity to learn here, not only in Brazil, but in the other countries that form the Amazon. So those species are very, very valuable, and the local handling cannot handle those fish that migrate in larger areas. So this species, Adorada, migrates, and its life cycle depends on the health of this complex ecosystem. And I'd like to share a link for you to understand a little more about the history of this fish. the size of the Amazon basin makes it difficult to handle the resources appropriately. And it's difficult to research the area scientifically, so it's a big challenge. If you work there, you know. So we propose a solution for this triple challenge. It's to create a network of people that build information regarding fish and water in the Amazon River, especially with technologies of low cost. So Ichu is an app and a database about those migration fish that was developed by the ornithology department of Cornell with some partners, with the participation of indigenous communities and fishing association, fishers and researchers. So we seek to connect the citizens of the Amazon basin to share information regarding the fish, which are important to the ecosystem, and everybody who lives from this financial activity, from this productive activity. So which are the environmental factors that influence that? So citizens can input data that will help the conservation of the systems, aquatic systems of Amazon. And I'd like to talk to you about ICTU, and I'm sharing some information. And here we have the interface, some print screens here. So on the left side, the app, on the right side, the database. The app can be used as like a fishing journal to keep tabs on the individual records. And this web platform allows the organizations to share the historic data, and we use this information to understand the migration of those priority fish. And then we can understand them better to conserve and to handle those resources. So talking about the outcomes and the data we have, this is a map that represents. So we have 20,000 lists shared, and every list has many fishing observations. And this is a result of 270 people and institutions that have been sharing data and producing data. And this is about 74% of the 199 basins. So it includes Brazil, Peru, Ecuador, Colombia. So this map, in this map, you can see information about the upload of data and the data of the app. And here you have a result on the app strictly. So there's potential to expansion. So for you to understand the engagement processes, this is a graph that shows the variation of the typology of the activities that are developed by our partners at ICTU. So service assistant, capacitation, consultancy, the presentation of the project. And those results were produced by the partner organizations in Bolivia, Brazil, Colombia, Ecuador, and Peru. So each partner organization organized activities about engagement, like presentation events, adjusted to the local groups which they work with. In Brazil, we work in the state of Acre, Amazonas, Rondônia, and Pará. Mambirawa Institute, Sapopema, Ecoporé, Fronteiras Institute, UFAM, UNI, IMAPEBAN. They are organizations that participate actively on the implementation of ICTU. And for you to know, those are the 3 meetings that we made in 2019. The meeting of the fair was organized by Mamirawai Institute, the Porto Velho meeting by Uni and Ecoperé, and the meeting of Pucallpa in Peru. It was a common welfare institute, a local organization in Peru. You have 2 minutes. Okay. So for me to conclude it, I talked about what the network does. So this Citizen Science Network is an initiative that wants to share information and make science a little more democratic, and to work on the development of sustainability for the Amazon basin. So it's not restricted to a group of specialists. And this is very interesting because it's aligned with the other presentations we saw today. So inside this network, we work on engaging the population, sharing experiences, and generating knowledge for the system. So the initiative Amazon Waters collaborates, the Live Andin Rivers, and some others. So this is a list of the partners. There are 37 members among organizations and natural persons that work on strengthening this network. And we also have ways to participate that I can list on the chat. And there's an email for you to want further information. And I'd like to acknowledge the generous support of the Foundation Gordon and Betty Moore. They're a big part of this ICTU initiative. Thank you very much. Thank you, Gina.
So
great presentation.
All the presentations, they
All the
were
presentation
really, really
were very interesting.
Many, aggregated experiences. I would just like everyone to open your cameras, turn on your cameras so we can just start this dialogue. We have so many experiences. Some of them, they're older, and one of them are really young. So there's been a lot of participation of young people. And we also see how important, exchanging information between generations is important. And we realize the similarities, among the information you brought us. So just to start the dialogue, we also have some questions on the chat and in our spaces, our presentation. I would just like to ask you guys the following. I would just like you guys to, just talk about your perception around 5 minutes and tell us a little bit how it happens to you. How these experiences, they started, about the participation in dialogue, the participation of community member and the councils, because that's an issue that arose, among the people that are following us. But I think this is a point that how this information, they have been utilized concretely to support the decision-making, just maybe looking at the decision-making in a general way. When we look at the Monitora program, Luis Henrique and China that are involved in specific questions. And when you look at this great amount of information that are being generated that can support decision-making, but also to the local level, and how this has been utilized by the managers, and the communities to support the decision-making in these territories. I would like just to share a little bit about it. So can we maintain the order? So China, please. So thank you, Angela. So initially, so there's a initial articulation on the strategy for the implementation of the participative monitoring. So that happens in all the conservation units, both in the management council and in the communities, that they also have, they don't have this kind of, community members with local doors in any way. So this is always carried out like that. So in some conservation units, as I mentioned in the presentation, there are some, decisions that are really local because it's not really up to us to decide how it's going to be. In some conservation units, we need to have the green light from the community members. They have to agree with the implementation so it can happen. But not in other units. And sometimes we have the presentation, and some they have to locally agree to that. In other regions, they don't, because we can really have to decide what. So I think I answered that one. So about the use of information to the decision making. So the information, they can be used by these tools of management. But we had this practical agreement. We had this, practical agreement in Rio Altumã that has been revised, actually. This is one of the basic premises that we have on this matter. We also have the handling of natural resources. So the local members, they carried out, actions in this sense. One of the advanced protocols is not all the conservation units, they have chestnut, monitoring, but and we also have, the monitoring for young plants, really young plants. And, they just got to understand how the young one looks. And just so when they were monitoring, these young versions of the plant, they were actually killing that, And all this decision making was based on the use of this information. We had other issues. We have a greater understanding of handling actions. We can better understand, handling and management. And we also have the discussion in the, knowledge checkpoint. I didn't really cover this knowledge checkpoint. Besides having the discussion of information, by the end of this program, we have this action program based on the information that we have just discussed. So we think about many actions. So we have, many types of actions that are going to depend from region to region. And this knowledge checkpoint is going to have horizontal information, and they also contribute to the protection of the conservation units. So I think I've covered all of that. I don't know if I didn't really respect the 5 minutes, and thank you very much. So Luis Henrique, can you please just maybe talk to us a little bit about it? Yeah, so I just want to add up a little bit to that. The same process in the implementation happens in the Chandless. And so we talk to the communities and the leaderships, what the proposition is about, the delimitation of the areas to be sampled. We can really overlap the areas. That we're going to have a crossover of people just, managing these areas. So, and the community members are involved in this process of opening the tracks and decision-making about the targets to be monitored. When we talked about governance and the data that are generated, they are going to be subsidized by these people. We have around 4 years of data collected. So we had this little setback due to the pandemic. And the management of the park is actually analyzing this data and to make it viable. We have all this data available for that. So the community actually has this demand. So Luis and Ricardo, which is the management of the park, no, we want to monitor Takajapa, and they're really taking that away. And we want to, that's the kind of thing we want to monitor, we want to just keep an eye on. They actually participate, they are interested in monitoring species, that they have this tourist-wise approach. And besides the necessities of the community members. Well, that will be it. So that's cool. So Fabiano, of course, if you want to exchange, some issues, of course, you can talk to each other. So Fabiano, can you talk to us? So I'm gonna share my screen again. I don't know if it's gonna really disturb, the other ones. So you're gonna finish your presentation? Yeah, maybe that's it. So throughout these years, we have the participation of more than 60% of the families declaring their data. And we have varied around 131, 180 families that are living by the river. Similarly, as the other ones, this information, they are back on a series of information that are going to be provided to the communities under specific demand. When they have to work with the delimitation or occasionally about the update of the handling pen, and we update this information on the system and we share with the interested local doers. And it has serviced also the scientific research. So this is an image of the accumulated data. This is the intensity of use throughout these 13 years. Actually, it is 10 years. Based on this information, we can identify what areas are underused and which ones are prioritized. And that has actually shed light on the conflict of, chestnut trees. And it has also helped to reach, agreement in this area. And we can crop these areas on any kind of resource. So this is about, the shadow of hunting, and this is the intensity of hunting in different areas by the river and along the river. This is specifically about the hunting on chelonians. And how we can see, this different kind of plants, they vary along the river, and how they're going to allocate different types of research. And we have really detailed information on, aquatic individuals. So we have a plethora of information on that. The seasonality of collection, the type of the animal being collected. And just to conclude, we were able to estimate the animal biomass. And we have also been able to spot the importance of fishing, in these communities. And this is a map of the probability of occurrences of chestnut trees in this area. All of that, these are questions asked by the questions or by ICMBio that we have worked it out, and then we share for discussion and use, a practical use of this information.
Perfeito.
Wow, perfect.
Super interessante.
that's really, really interesting.
Gina quer trazer pouquinho.
So, Gina, would you like to share a little bit about it? So the experiences that we have with ICTU, we finished the pilot project in 2013. We don't really have this robust body of information. In relation to the experience about the local people that we are going through in Bolivia, it is an example. It is in a study on the reproduction of fish. So we have this study came out, and we also have information on that. And this result also has an impact on a campaign to promote these production zones of fishing. The idea is to impact public policies. It is a key region, not only for Bolivia, but also for the whole basin. It's a way to impact the policies with the data. So we finished the pilot project, and then the pandemic hit on, and it happened. Really interesting. I think what's really, really clear, the challenges, because working with the participative monitoring is not really simple, but at the same time, the moment you can is make it a structure. In the first moment, you can take this information to institutions, be it governmental, non-governmental, that are actually supporting these communities. And I think they become protagonists, and it can actually perpetuate in this territory. I think not only for biodiversity, but also for the resources they depend on. We got this really interesting look on all of that. You see that how you guys dialogue and how you reach these dialogues, how you inform, how this is gonna get started. And we guarantee that the greater number of people are adequately informed and they understand what they're actually taking part in. It is some kind of care that all of you have shown that you actually have it, and also the use of information and thinking collectively to use all this kind of information. So maybe if you want to share a little bit about it, this is a central element. I know the initiatives, some to a greater degree, a lesser degree, but I understand that this dialogue and this care and this concern. So when we talk about community monitoring, it is a strategy that they're actually collecting the data, and other institutions are gonna analyze it and they make their decisions based on that. They're not data collectors, they are participating agents in this whole process. And maybe if you can talk about it, I think it's worth exploring this topic. Maybe not everybody. I think you can manage your turn. I think I've already talked about it when in the other time. I don't know if you're a data collection and you have this scientific talk, but you don't actually have this exchange of information. And I think I've already answered that, so go ahead. So maybe if you want to talk a little bit about it, I think it is really, really clear how this information, they are generated for them, by them and for them. And I think it's really, really clear because it is actually supporting them to make decisions that are more qualified with more information.
Acho que o Fabiano
I think Fabiano,
travou, né?
yeah, he's not really available.
Bom, mas se algum de vocês quiser comentar, gente.
Well, maybe some of you guys, you can comment on that. Well, this knowledge checkpoint that Cristina mentioned is really key. The experience that we have with these three, meetings with fishermen, it was a space of exchange and having really different realities. We have this meeting of fishermen that are from the reserve that are in Porto Velho. They suffer great pressure from, entities of infrastructure. We also have fishermen from Mano, Peru. They don't really have a lot of really this experience to the economic level. So for them, having contact with these really distinct realities, it is motivational. So it happened in the meeting that we had in Porto Velho and also in the other places I mentioned. It is a very intense contact between the researchers and the fishermen, and we know there's this potential. We also got this issue that is generational, that is a meeting of generations. We are going through a moment of great, changes between the generations. And there is a risk of losing this kind of teaching and this kind of knowledge. And it is, a moment that we have to intensify this exchange of information.
Fabiano, você caiu.
So Fabiano, I don't know if you want to really talk about it, a little bit about it, Luis. I had a blackout and now I'm back. I think the feedback and the qualification of these feedback is fundamental. Without that, we lose, a gigantic opportunity in the stimulus that they are actually, the investing the money. What I can really talk about it is that the systems, about the systematization of data is really hard, it's really complicated. We need a specialist here and there, overly trained just to generate this output. Maybe this great challenge from now on is how we can create these tools in a way that the owning of these, these data is quicker and is faster by the owner of this information. Maybe having this simple app. I know the Monitora has this, look, and I also take the opportunity. We're actually shutting down the cycle in July. We are going to shut down the collection of data that we've carried out, data collection that we've done in paper. And now we're going to create this really friendly tool that is easier to use, user-friendly. Not only thinking about if we can magnify the database, but also the use and the application of this information. This initiative is going to be in close relationship with IP through the ITA public call, and you're all invited to take part in that.
Obrigada, Fabiano.
So thank you, Fabiano.
A gente está olhando aqui se tem mais alguma
So we can,
que seja específica de quem.
we're checking if there are any more questions by the people who are watching us. Some questions that they brought, they're actually for everybody, for all the panelists. Caroli, if you have, or the people that are over there, if there is any question that are specifically directed to some of the panelists, if you can help us with that. Hi, Angela. I think the questions, they have been solved. I don't know if there is another person that would like to ask another question. So maybe my suggestion, if we can move on to the closing, if we can discuss the main challenges, the main lessons learned. This issue of technology was really, really strong. Last week's webinar, I think Fabiano covered a little bit about it. Tina also talked about it. And Tina is technology, and Luis also uses this technology, and also actually in the case of APA in the monitoring of bagres. So maybe if you want to move on to the closings, to challenges and lessons learned, and maybe there is somebody out there who wants to ask a question, we're open to that. So cool. I would like to add to this reflection. So maybe if you have this perspective of financing in the long terms, because when we're talking about monitoring, we're thinking about it. We're thinking about the long term. And we see the importance of APA and other projects and other funding entities and conservation programs that are actually bringing and providing this opportunity for that to happen, and how you guys see that in the future. So let's change order. Maybe let's start with Luis and Henrique, right? Yeah, that's all right. So in a nutshell, about the experiences and the challenges, the main is the communication with the communities. This event of sharing checkpoint, only the results, the dialogue that was established with many dear people from Kazumba. I worked with them, with my dear friend Nayara. She brought so many things that was so really, really cool. It is something that you can plan that to the state of Acre level. And then the pandemic hit on, let's go, let's move on. And that's the idea. I have many ambitions about the learning with the monitors, learning from the monitors, about the use, between quotation marks, update for the monitors on site. We have the popular names of these endemic species in the region. So we have this mix of, local people and also from the other side of the border, and different names are happening at the same time. We also discussed the use of, cups just to put the base for the butterflies in mass. We trash them away. We don't actually use them again. So there's this grass monster that we call taboca. We don't know who actually created it, or God created it, the devil created it. How the bamboo is shallow. We are in a process of using the bamboo just to put the butterfly bait. We are letting go of the plastic cup and using the shallow bamboo just to house the baits. About the continuity, of financing, really cool experience. And maybe Carol is here, she's here, and she contributed a little bit to that, was the challenge to unify the monitoring programs that are very diverse, with the monitoring of threats, the monitoring of bagres inside the IAPA initiative, and the monitoring of biodiversity. If we consider that the threat monitoring, they're going to have an impact on mammals or synergetic birds, and in the case of IAPA, in the case of bagre monitoring, it can be maybe in the complementary targets. All of that is talking to each other. They're talking among themselves. And we can provide all the support that we need through all these actions. It was a really cool and well-planned and well laid out, this marriage of actions. So thank you, Luis and Henrique. So Tina, do you want to maybe talk about it a little bit more, about these learnings and teachings? So the lessons learned that we talked about, the participative monitoring is essential. It is constantly in a place.
Serem estabelecidas é essencial a
Some
presença.
trust relations to be established is the paramount. And also, besides that, a local researcher to work locally. The project team has 20 people, and half of them are local researchers that are spread in the Amazon to work this trust relation, to be there present. You can't simply go there as an outsider. No. If you don't have a straight and real relationship with the community, you cannot be there. And the importance of this horizontal discussion to identify the targets, to see if it's important to be part of the monitoring. It's a big difference. Depending on the characteristics of the conservation unit, it can happen in a way or in another way. Some people went there, validated that, the community entered that, there were many people participating. So this is a big difference regarding the biodiversity data and the impact reports. So this horizontal discussion is essential from the beginning on. It's important to take a qualified information and to debate among peers. And this is one of the lessons that we learned. And the challenges, first one, funding. Funding is the biggest challenge because the MPBID, as I said before, is to be a supporter of the implementation of monitoring in those units. And this process was going well. We would go out and they would have the resources and the funding to do that. But with all those budget cuts and the problems in funding, so when EP leaves the program, it's going to be very hard for them to keep monitoring because the federal budget was cut. So not even wider policies are granted. So not even the public funding is granted. It can change. And the team, the ICMBio staff is also an issue. It's important to have technology involved. There are many things to do. The local researcher is essential to involve community and also to organize the logistics to cover the lack of personnel that the units face. And the communication is always an issue. It's very hard and complex to talk. Human beings are complicated. The human being is complicated. Not only to disclose the project, but to talk among the staff. Communication is always a challenge in human relations. And data analysis. The dream would be to have participation in the analysis, but we face a gap in quality education that doesn't allow people to interpret and analyze data without the presence of the university and specialists. But of course, local staff can go to the university, but the specialists are necessary. So we dream about that when the monitoring will be participative even in the analysis of the data, not in the collection. Thank you, Gina. Would you like to comment? Okay, to complement what Luis said, that is a trust relation among and how to find synergy and interests. And this leap. Another challenge, talking about technology, is technologies before being a way to close the gap, it can widen the gap because you need education and qualification. It's important to know how to interpret what they're reading. And I think the process here is first teaching people on how to deal with digital information and gadgets. So it's a big challenge because there's this social aspect of the situation, an educational aspect, and the structure, because we don't have access to that. So I think those are the two main focus that are challenges. So thank you, Gina, Fabiano. Well, I talk about similar things. I think that the challenges are how to trust the system, the reliability of the system on the use of the data, on what are the purpose of the monitoring, if they are using the data as they are preaching, they're saying that they're going to use, and the reliability of the data from a methodological perspective. Can they be used in public policies? I think the challenge is to make it relevant. So this information needs to be useful for the community, for all the actors that are involved in the systems. And the information must be simple. What's hard? So to develop systems that are easy to operate, to use, that are user-friendly. And talking about lessons that we learned, talking about Unity River is amazing, the diversity of uses that you can see that, and we can debate a lot about that. Seymour captured over 160 natural resources in the region. I think we have a very important component to complement that is education. So when you're talking about monitoring, we're talking about geography, mathematics, data analysis. Everything is very, very important in the process. And at last, there is a development of leadership. So all the people that are engaged in those processes, they become protagonists. They play roles and they act in the community. And regarding the funding, I didn't mention the funders of the system because we had several. The first and main sponsor was Amur for over 10 years, but we have Fundo Vale, we had IP, and several different organizations through all those years funding the system. And we are finishing that first phase in June, in July, because of lack of funding, and especially regarding the payment of the monitors. The maintenance of the data collection, the costs has been difficult. The format of the project makes it difficult. So because of that, we decided to finish this paper-based work and try to digitalize that without paying the monitors from now on, unfortunately. Thank you, Fabiano. Those challenges are common and mutual among all the initiatives. I see we are moving to the end of this conversation that was really interesting. We can notice many similarities among the initiatives, and those highlights the importance of dialogue and promoting local protagonism, leadership. We're not talking only about data collection and management. We're talking about empowering the local communities and making those communities decision makers with the data they collect. And all those trust relations that you mentioned, they're very important. And at the same time that we are talking about protagonism, we are talking about a massive amount of data that are generated. Looking at the initiatives, we can realize that they are happening, and it's necessary to create technologies and systems to deal with this big data. And this biodiversity and natural resources inventory of information are very important to talk about climate change, for instance. And it's very important to keep collecting data And this is very important for our decision-making in long term, and of course, supporting the local management of those specific territories. And we notice that the technology is a challenge, but also a solution if we learn how to deal with that. And I think this final debate regarding funding goes through making those initiatives important for the population. It's a challenge for everyone involved here. You who are watching the webinar, it's important to understand the importance of those initiatives, the value of the process and of the data collected, and everything that they bring to the local communities, and then keep looking to have initiatives, to keep the initiatives, improve funding, and make the public authorities understand it's a priority to keep the conservation units, the biodiversity, the traditional knowledge of the local communities. So I'd like to thank you guys. Thank you all. It was a very, very important exchange. Amazing experiences, some old, some new, all of them super valuable. And it was a big exchange of information. We can learn from each other and build better initiatives together. And I hope that it will strengthen the continuity of those experiences in Amazon and or in other ecosystem, other biomes, and other conservation units to get to know better those initiatives. So I'd like to thank you all, and I'd like to open the mic to Carole. Thank you, Carole. Thank you, Angela. Thank you all for the amazing presentations. And speakers are very easy to moderate. And I'd like to invite Braulio to finish that. And I have just a few things to say regarding the sustainability of those initiatives. When we look at MPB, we can understand that what is the focus? To be recognized, to be acknowledged by the federal government, and to be nationally implemented. And we can see that the funding is fragile, and it's important to have EP supporting and giving technical support. I'm not disregarding the efforts of the government, but the complexity of the implementation of a program as MPB. So the importance of having that, and we talked about that last week, it's very important for the government to be together, but us as NGOs and the university to keep supporting each other and helping fundraising the initiatives. And there was something that Fabiano said that was important to me. It's like we talked about monitoring of threats and pressures and territorial surveillance, and this one about biodiversity and natural resources. And at the end, when you talk about the monitoring of those trees and the use of resources, and it can lead to conflicts and hunting threats, and those initiatives, they move together, they go together. So this monitoring of hunting threats will help the other monitoring. How to integrate them in a better way? There's no easy answer. It's just a question for those initiatives to be able to integrate those monitoring initiatives. And I think the use of technologies is the future. To use paper and spreadsheets, I think in 5 years will be over. We must start using apps in a wider way. And if we're talking about participation, not only in the collection of data, but in the analysis of data, those apps are amazing to facilitate the analysis. And the youth, the new generations, they are digital natives. They were born in this technological world. We were not born in this world. And even those indigenous populations and the local populations in Amazon, they are connected to that. So I think the future is that we are going to use more and more digital tools. And last webinar, I kept thinking about that. I think we have to create a work group and another debate, another round of debates about the use of technologies. So do you know the independent monitoring network of FGV? Many organizations work on monitoring independently in different topics about biodiversity and territorial surveillance. I think we could maybe channel the conversation and spread this debate and enlarge this debate. I thank you all kindly, and I will give the mic to Braulio to summarize and to speak on behalf of the project and IUCN. Thank you, Carol. Thank you, Angela. Thank you, everyone. Those experiences were very, very important regarding those initiatives. There are many challenges about sharing of information. There is no supremacy of knowledge. If you're talking about participative monitoring, this is the key. And another thing that is very important that talks a lot about Brazil and the whole region is that people have always asked, and we have always asked ourselves, why are we monitoring? It's not only because we have to do, it's not what for, it's who are we doing that for? So the focus is important for us. We can work many different methodologies, protocols, but why are we doing that? What's the main purpose? And if we are talking about participative monitoring, what's the main benefit for the local population? And to have a protected area is not necessarily a benefit to people. So we need to find a consensus and to find a common ground, because many people can see monitoring as an external oversight made by outsiders that are coming to the territory to observe. And for instance, in the case of Peru, talking about illegal mining and land trafficking, and the same people are involved. So there are interest conflicts. And it leads to a feeling that sometimes it's not reliable. So it's important to use the information properly, how to use information, when to use information. The local actor is seeing that the way we are seeing that. So I think we need to involve the community and to generate benefits that are interesting to those people, not only to us, because the fishing for them is about food security. So for us, we are interested in the forest, biodiversity, but they are probably interested in the value of the symbolic value of the territory, their family's business in the integral concept. For them, it's a matter of losing their territory, because for them, if they lose their territory, they lose everything, their medicines, their animals. So we have to explain that to them, or what they lose if they do not monitor. So it's important to make it clear from the perspective of governance, because we have participative monitoring experiences that in which we call a local data, invite a local data to collect, a local actor to collect data. But from the beginning, the concept of the use of this information is connected to the interests And the language is important here. How do you translate that as a map, as statistics, or how do you communicate with them? There are some transferences. It's a big dynamic process. We are learning, of course. The funding issue is essential because sometimes there are some different topics. Sometimes we train different monitors, and then the monitors use that knowledge to work for the extractivism companies. So, but thank you for your participation, for the insights. Thank you, Carol. Thank you guys on behalf of IUCN. We are very happy and we'll keep working. Thank you for the opportunity. Thank you, Braulio. Thank you, guys. Thank you very much for the invitation. Have a great day. Good to see you.